Was there ever a time you're thankful the pandemic happened? What was the reason? My mom is 85 and in assisted living in a city 250 miles away. During lockdown I started calling her every day at 11 a.m., and we became closer than we have ever been. She became a close friend. That is quite a gift. She's become a lot more confused lately and is slipping into dementia now. I'm sorry her last coherent year had to be during COVID lockdown, but I am so glad we had our daily chats. We still do, but she is fading now. Love you, Mom. I've been able to understand my newly diagnosed ADD/ASD son and what his challenges are with regards to school so much better than I understood it when he was in school full-time. I never wanted to homeschool my kids, but doing online school for the last school year has been informative. I think it's going to help me advocate for him so much better than if we hadn't had this experience. It's also been completely out of the norm and interesting to have our whole family home. Husband working from home, kids homeschooling, and have no outside family demands on us due to isolation protocols. It hasn't been a 100% great experience, but it has been an experience. My boyfriend and I had been working in the service industry for a long time and trying to navigate our relationship amidst all the toxic alcoholism and drug culture that comes with it. If the pandemic didn't happen, we'd probably have broken up from the instability, but instead, we both quit the service industry. I got a stable desk job working from home and he enrolled in college at almost 40 years old to continue to pursue his ambition to become a firefighter. Finally got out of that toxic, unhealthy industry. Almost every day I'm thankful it happened. Going in I was in a job, construction trades, that I didn't even know was killing me. I was up at 4 a.m. every day, when there was work, miserable all day, at work, and then too tired to properly engage with my family once I got home. Then, when there wasn't work I'd be even grumpier as I'd be worried about how to pay bills and where my next check was coming from. Got laid off in April and was really down for almost a month. I started doing some projects around the house. Built a garden, built a PC, fixed some stuff, etc., and spending more quality time with my wife and kids. I feel like I've really gotten to know these wonderful little people so much better than I would have otherwise, and they don't have to see Dad coming home grumpy from work anymore. A couple of months into the pandemic I found a job with a small service company, in my trade, and started using skills I hadn't used in years as I had worked myself into a supervisor role at my old job and was mostly off the tools. I found that I love fixing things and my trade is really where it's at for me work-wise. Recently I took a new job that pays better and has more benefits and stability than my old service job. I'm doing plant maintenance now and there is potential for me to get a second trade ticket. I'm already a master electrician and new job wants to indenture me as a millwright. I love learning new skills and the crew at the new job are really fun guys to work with. Also, my children are so excited as Dad's new job is at an ice cream plant. Throughout all of this I have gotten to be closer with my wife than ever before and we really enjoy our special times together after the kids are in bed and we can just relax. I know the pandemic is a horrible thing that happened, but my wife and I wouldn't trade the last year and a half for anything in the world. I'm a fan of working from home, I won't lie about that. I've been able to build an exercise regime, not rush to finish work, not be annoyed when I finish late and then have to sit in traffic for an hour, not panic when I wake up late. My mental health has recovered greatly and it's just nice. My job is now a means to an end, not a priority. Managed to cut a lot of toxic people out of my life. Oh, and I can stream shows whilst I work, which has actually boosted my productivity. Listen to music all I want, work in my boxers only, no one watching over my shoulder. Life is good. As an autistic person, I was grateful that I, ironically, didn't have to mask and spend all day wasting energy pretending to be neurotypical in order to be accepted by my colleagues. Working from home, I could let myself relax without worrying about being judged for behaviors I can't necessarily control. In a way, when the masks went on, my mask got to come off. I forgot how exhausting it is to suppress all your natural coping mechanisms for 8 hours a day 7 days a week. Edit. I will add that my job is now bringing us back into the office full-time with no consideration of working from home arrangements. I am absolutely terrified of going back to it, honestly. After my entire team got laid off, I decided to use the free time to write a book I've been wanting to tackle for years. Ended up being a trilogy, and the first title is out already. No, not providing a link, because this is a discussion and not a chance to smile. Had I not had the time away from an office, and the ability to focus mostly undistracted, it never would have happened. When the lockdown hit, my company decided that it was going to be more profitable to buy out people's remaining time left to get their full retirement benefits and trim the rosters down. Also, for reference, I work in a hospital kitchen, so we were considered essential. So a lot of people suddenly got anywhere from 1 to 5 years sliced off the amount of time they'd need to work. This created a huge vacuum of positions that had been camped and for over a decade. It is as close as I can think of a changing of the guard. Now the peeps that have been around 10-12 years are the old heads. Those of us in the 5-10 year range are the older vets, and there's been more fresh, new faces than I've ever seen. I personally had been working part-time for almost 4 years. Each new full-time position to open was like a swamp full of piranhas feasting on a corpse. Then the pandemic hit and all of us part-timers who'd been languishing while praying to get the next full-time spot very quickly found ourselves as the new, established full-time crew. It has been tough filling in the part-time spots with quality peeps. The company has a tendency to hire them as per diem first and extend offers to peeps who prove themselves. But because of my jump in status, I now get free health insurance, and now I'm earning PTO at a rate of 8.5 hours per 2-week pay period. Yeah, working in a hospital through a pandemic was not fun. It still isn't fun, but even the shittiest coworker of mine now at least gets respect that they previously didn't for hanging in there and not giving up. Some did, and no disrespect or shame there. It was a very tough period to work through, mental health-wise. Life is good, not great. My living situation got fucked in the winter and I'm back living with my folks. But that's sorta cool too because they are in their 60s and 70s now, so they like having me around. I moved to British Columbia, Canada for a finite time just before COVID. I planned to travel to Vegas, Hawaii, New York, LA for trips during that time, and I'm sure would have spent lots of time drinking and going out in Vancouver too. Being unable to leave BC or go to bars every weekend meant that instead I got super into camping and have traveled to many places in BC instead. And it's the most incredible place I could ever imagine. I'm sure I'll visit Vegas, NY etc. from the UK when I'm living there again, but I never would have visited northern BC, Vancouver Island, the Okanagan etc. from outside Canada. TLDR, I traveled domestically instead of internationally and it was epic and life-changing. Number: I work as a monitor technician at a hospital. I don't have eyes on the patient's body, but I watch the heart. I watched a lot of people die, too many names for me to remember. I normally try to remember the name of people that I see passing and wish them a good rest when they pass. Just a habit of trying to respect a person one last time. Since hospitals in the United States are more businesses, they're generally understaffed and their employees are generally overworked, underappreciated, at hours. Staffing shortage was an ongoing thing for a couple of years now. I watched people throughout the course of the pandemic deny the severity of its impact on our local population, one of those people being my manager and another the director of our cardiac intensive care unit. We went from an average of 1 to 2 deaths once maybe every week or every other week for severe cases to roughly what seemed 1 to 2 a day, sometimes 2 a shift. I watched roughly half the population of the city that I live in deny the efficacy of masks, roaming around and intentionally coughing at people or scoffing at others who wore masks. I watched the nurses where I work get so stressed from doctors yelling at them, because the doctors are obviously stressed as well, watching patients die, not having enough staff, and, when the staffing department would hire a couple of nurses, nowhere near enough. Saddle the overworked and overstressed nurses with trainees during a pandemic when possibly a couple of people would die per shift. New nurses weren't being adequately trained in anything other than worst-case scenario stress levels. I could hear nurses breaking down when I had to call them. I watched unit after unit being converted to COVID units without the accommodations of negative pressure rooms. People were just getting infected all the fucking time. I got breakfast with a nurse friend at one point because we needed to socialize after weeks of not seeing friends or family, and I watched his face with 1,000 yards stare as we ordered our food because of how the night had gone. On top of all that, I watched our then president promise us the pandemic would be over within weeks of it starting. Remember him promising we would be over it by April of 2020, deny that there was a pandemic. Suggest vaguely that bleach ingestion could fix the pandemic. Sure, ingesting bleach will cure everything, including life, and then continued to watch as roughly half the populace went into denial, telling me that I'm not watching too many goddamn people die every week. In the end, though, it's had an overall effect on our ability to commercially produce things, not related to the medical field, and my ass is still chapped that I can't buy a goddamn RTX 3060 to veg the fuck out after work. TL doctor, number. No, I'm not thankful for the pandemic at all, not in the least bit. I hated it. I hate it. Too many people died that fucking well didn't have to, and I want my video card. Okay, without going into too much, the week lockdown happened, my ex moved out. It was a bad relationship, but I was in denial. So now I was locked inside, with a lot of big feelings and nowhere to go. It forced me to confront myself, a lot of my own mental issues and a lot of my own trauma. I hated it, resisted it and fought it. Eventually though, I learned to work on myself slowly, and I don't think that would have happened without lockdown. Yes, it made me slow down and reevaluate what I was doing with my life. I cut out people who were dragging me down, and reconnected with old friends through group Zoom calls, changed jobs, started taking care of my body and lost 30 pounds, found a new hobby. I do wish I made these changes years ago, instead of waiting for a global health crisis to kick my butt into gear. Edit. Thank you to everyone who took the time to read my comment, and to those who responded. Reading all your responses truly made my day. It's reinforced that we're all in this together, even if we're physically apart, doing the best we can. It made me realize how bad my relationship was. I hate comparing situations, everyone struggles differently, but he didn't talk to me for the first 6 weeks of the lockdown because his stress was worse than mine. He was at his mom's with his brother, having her cook and clean and basically do everything for him while he played games all day. Meanwhile, I had just moved in my own flat, had no bed and very little furniture, no internet, and I was struggling to get hold of groceries. But despite all that, he had it worse. I realized that I needed to look after myself. Because of the pandemic, Australia's top art universities in big cities had a huge decrease in international students. and hundreds of apartment complexes were empty and desperate. It's safe to say there wasn't a lot of competition. This means a lot to me since I lived in a very small, barely populated town, and I would likely go unnoticed or prioritized less over international students. I had the opportunity to go to my dream uni and get a steal of an apartment lease with my partner, though sometimes I got to meet my best friend. He once replied to a post or something and asked if we wanted to play some games together. He was living in the US while I was in Germany, but our schedules worked really well together and we got to spend a lot of time together. Over time he and I each introduced some other friends and played different games. Now we formed our own friend group. He just recently moved back to Finland and now we play a little less together, but I'm really glad to have met him. We are also planning to meet up sometime this or next year with the other guys from our group since we only know each other from gaming together. I proposed to my girlfriend on March 20th. She said yes. Lockdown happened the following day, so she moved in with me into a small 2-bedroom apartment. That Wednesday, I got laid off from a job I desperately wanted to quit. Since I got laid off and didn't quit, I got enhanced unemployment, which basically meant I got a raise. A couple months later, we got married. Due to COVID regulations, we could only have 10 people at the wedding, which kept the guest list small for a very good reason that everyone understood, and kept our wedding expenses very low. Getting married allowed me to get on my wife's insurance, which was much less expensive than getting it on my own. A little over a month later, I started a job related to pandemic response, which paid very well. I made more during the second half of 2020 than in all of 2019. This income allowed me to save up enough to put a decent down payment on a house, with historically low interest rates. In December, I got another, more stable, job, which required me to work from home. This job pays about the same as the one I had before the pandemic, and it's for a much better company with many more opportunities for advancement. Doctor, before, single, renting, in debt, after, married, homeowner, with comfortable nest egg. I know it will be buried, but I really wanted to tell this somewhere, so here we go. I am very anxious, most probably have social anxiety, but I didn't go to a doctor for a diagnosis. Anyway, in the autumn of 2020 I started high school, and none of my previous classmates were in my class. At the beginning, I had to go physically to school, and even if just half the class was present, we were split in two halves and one group went to school and the other took online classes. Switching every week, I would come home exhausted. It was a lot of social interaction and new people, so a lot of anxiety, and it was too much. Luckily, I only went for 3 weeks until the COVID situation got worse and we switched to full online. This helped a lot by taking away anxiety-inducing factors like how I look, how I speak and things like that. Also, the interactions, both with teachers and classmates on Discord, didn't feel so direct, so they produced less anxiety. It was also easier to be in a conversation but not saying anything online than physical. One day, a group that formed added me on their Discord, which only contained about 15 people of my class, because they needed one more player in an Among Us game and knew I was a nice guy. Probably because I also shared me homework with people from there a few times. Since then I started to enter their calls and slowly relax around them. After a few months, I could finally feel comfortable around them, and I actually felt like, hey, I actually made some friends. I also went out with them outside a few times, while we were in quarantine, which helped me develop even more. Overall, the quarantine and spending time online allowed me to take everything slower and gave me time to feel comfortable around these new people and in these new situations. And here I am now, with only 1 week of school left, as a totally different person than I was 9 months before. I made friends, I grew more social, I kinda discovered my clothing taste. I am still in the process of figuring this out, but I am getting somewhere, and I grew my self-esteem. Sure, COVID wasn't the only thing that helped me achieve this. It took a lot of effort, motivation, hope and support from my sister, but I can't deny that little things like spending time online rather than physical, or a silly game like Among Us helped me start my growing process. There is still more to be done. My development isn't over yet and I still have things to work on, but I am so proud of myself, of the person that I am growing into, and I am so thankful to all the people that helped me get here. If you are in a very low spot in life, remember that seemingly small things can butterfly effect into a huge avalanche of events that positively impact your life. All you have to do is wait to see what tomorrow will bring. I want to end this with a lyric from my favorite artist, that I might also tattoo on myself for something lol. Hopeless changes over time.